Ten ignored horror films that embraced unapologetic, cheesy beauty of rubbery practical effects. If watched with a modern eye, the seams of any classic can immediately be spotted. Although this may cause you to roll your eyes, it doesn't mean that the film is bad or not worth your time. It simply means that it is old. When it comes to horror films from the 1970s and 80s, the campy practical effects make viewers feel the nostalgia that far outweighs the sentiment of modern-day CGI animation. Below is a list of films that unapologetically embraced the cheesy beauty of rubbery practical effects from the gooey 1980s. The entire decade showcased terrific work by artists such as Rick Baker, Tom Savini, and Stan Winston. These men pushed the craft of makeup effects to a new level in their films before the audience knew CGI's impact.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Somebody help me!
Cellar Dweller, 1988. It has been 30 years since the grisly murder-suicide of Colin Childress, the creator of the comic book Cellar Dweller. But as often happens to those who are ignorant, comic book artist Whitney Taylor is doomed to repeat history most grotesquely. She is blindly unaware that her renderings are soon about to reincarnate the ghastly hysteria of Cellar Dweller. This film, directed by John Carl Buckler, has a smart opening sequence that shows Colin Childress having a shocking realization about his creation, although it leaves a few questions unanswered for viewers. These are instantly swept away from their brains by an extremely intriguing sequence that follows. The film's script and acting are such that they certainly wouldn't look out of place in an 80s soap opera. The dialogue is stilted and several actors have overperformed. However, there lies a classical, jazzy, orchestral soundtrack that the audience can appreciate, accompanied by an impressive costume for the demon, containing an animated head among all the chaos and schlock. Because the film intersperses comic book panels with its attacks, the gore amount is kept to a minimum. Nevertheless, viewers are in a funny, lighthearted treat and cannot look away at how well the film embraces its practical effects. The Curse, 1987. A religious man named Nathan Crane is trying to hold on to his farm and keep his family in line. At the same time, a real estate developer is trying to buy the farm property in the area, including Nathan Crane's family farm. He is hoping that Tennessee Valley Authority will choose this town as the site for constructing a new dam and recreational area. One night during a terrible storm, an unidentified glowing object crashes from the Crane farm. With it comes a horrible curse for the family and other members of the community. Directed by David Keith, The Curse presents a horror premise that combines a small-town paranoia-based 50s throwback vibe and a crazy man with a boil on his face, freaking everyone out. It's one of the gross-out classic pioneers from the 80s that would still hold up today. It seems like a standard, we're going to lose the farm kind of story until the large object appears and crashes out of nowhere. It contains practical effects that will make you laugh and cry at the same time. It has a handful of likable characters, and viewers are presented with genuinely funny moments amidst the horror. The film has a peculiar, atypically rural atmosphere, accompanied by an antithetical plot to its genre prescription. When movies from the 80s Renaissance are reflected on, one can't help but look back and feel nostalgic. Such is the case with The Curse. However, this movie also presents a good lineup of B-movie actors such as Claude Atkins, Cooper Huckabee, and Will Wheaton. Trapped Alive, 1988. 3 convicts break out of a prison and carjack, taking 2 women as hostages on a snowy Christmas night. However, things take an ugly turn later into the night when the car plummets down a mine shaft, leaving all 5 of them trapped down there. What will they do to escape? Trapped Alive, directed by Leszek Brzezinski, pursues a plotline that proves you can't judge a book by its cover. The film was initially thought with the title Forever Mine, but remained unreleased for 5 years. Its cast comprised primarily of TV actors, although genre veteran Cameron Michael makes a couple of appearances. The movie's special and practical effects are far more impressive than the rest of it, despite being quite cheesy. Trapped Alive is a seldom seen stock-and-play gem, although it contains minor flaws. The nostalgia of its era and its comical vibe indeed outweigh the film's quality. Viewers who hunt it down must be well aware that this movie isn't meant to be watched for its outstanding cinematic techniques, but rather its sheer thrill and entertainment value. Overlooking its slow pace and low body count, horror hounds are left with an ultimate slasher opus with both memorable characters, a high level of skill, and heart behind the camera.
You best try again, lawman.
Ghost Town, 1988. When Kate goes missing, Deputy Langley takes her to an abandoned ghost town. After encountering a series of peculiar people, he soon realizes that the town is not abandoned. Instead, it's haunted by the spirits of the outlaw Devlin and his gang. They hold the deceased townspeople hostage until the lawman can kill the outlaws. Ghost Town is a curious, low-budget dispatch from the end of Charlie Band's run at the studio. Directed by Richard McCarthy, it resembles an episode of The Twilight Zone, without the social commentary, of course. It is seemingly content with its relatively high idea of a genre blend. The film unfolds lethargically with plenty of visual distractions as Langley staggers through the old town. It's filled with notable moments, and while they don't reach hallucinogen and delirious levels, they present an array of ghastly and lurid visuals. The film's climax is a gory, blood-soaked affair filled with victims' necks, ears, and whole corpses, although it reaches a point where it feels genuinely unsettling. Not much time is wasted on this aspect. For better or worse, this film, despite having an undercooked script, manages just enough entertaining moments with its rubbery outfits and other practical effects. It's a quintessential Empire Films production, with an overall atmosphere of dread and desolateness. Madman, 1989. Virginia works at a second-hand bookstore. She's very interested in horror novels and discovers a really good book called Madman. The story is about an insane doctor named Malcolm Brand, who cuts off people's noses, ears, and hair, putting them on his face to impress a girl he likes. Soon, Virginia discovers that the book is nonfiction, and every time she picks it up to read, she sees the doctor. Before she knows it, he has escaped from the book into reality. Madman places its terror exactly where it belongs, amidst everyday life. Played by special effects man Randall William Cook, Brands contains grotesque makeup that will freak the life out of anyone watching. The movie contains the usual elements of a modern thriller, including the lonely woman in danger late at night who freaks out to discover that it's a typical false alarm. When the door creaks open, it's only her boyfriend. However, it also has a vast array of originality within the thin line it portrays between reality and imagination. This corresponds to what Virginia is reading and what is really happening. Besides its unapologetic practical effects, the film positively benefits from Jenny Wright thoroughly enjoying her role. Overall, some films acquire large cult followings and legions of loyal fans until they become mainstream. The ones that remain cult are only beloved by a handful of acolytes. Unfortunately, Madman ended up in the latter category, but remains a hidden gem that must be watched by all. Prison, 1987. In 1964, a convict named Charlie Forsyth is executed in Creedmoor Prison via the electric chair for a murder that he did not commit. Later, when the prison is closed, Charlie's soul returns from the afterlife to take revenge on the ones that did him wrong. When the prison reopens after 30 years, he finally goes on a killing spree. On a modest budget, Rennie Harlan, with producers Irwin Yablans and Charlie Band, deliver a high-voltage prison riot filled with an abundance of gross-out effects, razor-sharp cinematography, and Viggo Mortensen's best James Dean impression. Moreover, it being filmed in a real abandoned prison makes it all the more thrilling since it features heaps of real-life hardened cons as extras. This film stars as a regular prison movie with all the conventions including the quirky convicts, the dickhead warden, and power plays in the yard. Soon it incorporates supernatural elements with loads of fantastic effects done by Roger Corman, veteran John Carl Buckler. Viewers are exposed to all kinds of gross stuff, like boiling skin, barbed wire mummies, and Kane Hodder playing a dead guy. The opening nightmare sequence of this film is shot using a subjective camera. It makes excellent use of both its location and atmosphere to bring an authentic spin throughout.
Don't you fucking look at me!
Evil Ed, 1995. Eddie Tor Swenson is a mild-mannered film editor who has a wife, child, and comfortable job, which involves editing art and drama films. Following his editor's suicide, the heartless studio executive Sam Campbell transfers Eddie to the splatter and gore department. Here, he's asked to finish what the deceased editor was working on, a highly profitable but extremely violent slasher series. Sam Campbell allows Eddie to use his secluded country cottage to work without being disturbed for a few days. However, the seclusion and exposure to the film's violent nature and content begins driving Eddie insane. What begins as hallucinations lead to his darker, murderous side emerging. This puts the lives of everyone around him in great danger. Evil Ed, directed by Anders Jacobsen, is the unsung parody of the Evil Dead franchise. Popular opinion entails that the characters Eddie Tor Swenson and Sam Campbell are a play on Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. What starts as a promising spoof of the vast chasm between Europe's art film and the corruption of cinema practiced by the United States, splatter pick specialists, slowly runs out of creative fuel, becomes a victim of excess gore. Although the movie could have had a faster pace and better performances, its laughable, campy practical effects and comedic timing remains unmatched to several classic horror flicks. The film is filled with amusing moments that can make one grin, showcasing a perfect horror and comedy blend. It's filled with random one-liners from other movies and lapses into an extended, bloody skit that is both shocking and stylish enough to compensate for its low-budget limitations and thin premise. At the end of it all, viewers are treated to puppets, flying limbs, and bad jokes. What's not to like? Brain Damage, 1988. Brian is the average guy living in New York City, who becomes dependent on an evil, disembodied brain. He develops an unwilling symbiotic relationship with the brain as it feeds him a narcotic substance in exchange for his assistance to obtain innocent victims' brains for sustenance. This turns into a tour of 1980s underground New York City clubs, back lots, and other shady locations. Frank Henenlotter's Brain Damage resembles a 1980s anti-drug special that's been taken over by the people it's attempting to reach. Its moralizing has been spiked with elements of cynicism and impudent comic horror whimsy. It explores themes of decadence with the use of a preachy little mascot that reminds everyone of a degenerate cartoon character, created with hilariously cheesy practical effects. This film's particulars are poetically lurid in a handmade garage band sort of fashion. It thrives on the contradicting responses that the brain ailmer elicits. The creature is both ridiculous and disturbing. Viewers are unable to sort their reactions toward the film due to Henenlotter's overt tonal editorializing. This holds the risk of them thinking that Brain Damage is a primitive horror film, not entirely aware of its own joke. There is no doubt about the film's humor, as John Zacherle's voicing of Aylmer shows the creature to speak and behave in the most obnoxious ways. The film belongs to a tradition of 80s New York City-centric horror that suggests the cinematic equivalent of graffiti, and it has roots in the outrage voiced by British punk. The Dead Pit, 1989. Dr. Ramsey is a brilliant yet insane doctor who runs horrible experiments on his patients. Suddenly, he's shot and entombed with his fiendish experiments in the basement of a mental facility's abandoned wing. 20 years later, when the hospital is up and running, a Jane Doe with amnesia arrives and is admitted. This leads to a massive earthquake that cracks the Dead Pit's seal and frees the evil doctor to continue his work. Dead Pit rolled in at the 80s horror craze, still hanging desperately to the era's staples. It showcases scantily clad women, bad hairstyles, gratuitous gore, and convoluted stories in all their glory. These are the appearances that make this movie watchable and helps viewers cling to the memories of the better days. Jeremy Slate delivers a believable performance as Dr. Swan, a doctor who is turned into an alcoholic to cope with what he did and appears guilty of many crimes. As far as 80s horror goes, Dead Pit manages to change things up a bit from the conventional formulaic type and leave viewers guessing. Despite its flimsy plot, the film contains a handful of practical effects that have been seen to be believed. It portrays concepts that require viewers to extend their beliefs to holistically embrace Dead Pit's popcorn fun. Besides, being a zombie movie, the audience is aware that watching it with an open mind, or even no mind, can go a long way to appreciate its truly schlocky fun. One Dark Night, 1983. A strange Russian occultist named Karl Raymarsovich discovers a way to become powerful in death through telekinesis. Soon, he dies an unseen death, and 6 girls are also found in his apartment. On the night of his burial, Julie, a girl who wants to join a group called the Sisters at her high school, has to spend the night in the same crypt. Unbeknownst to her, 2 of the girls from the group intend to spy on her and frighten her. Soon, things go south, as Raymar is resurrected, and with him are other decaying bodies that come out of coffins that are sliding out. Raymar does this with the use of his new telekinetic powers. The bodies soon begin menacing the 3 girls trapped inside. Will they survive this horrific night in the crypt? One Dark Night, directed by Tom McLaughlin, might not be the best horror movie to come out of the 80s, but it's certainly effective at what it does. Cutting through the nostalgia, the film made the most of its small budget. Besides late legend Adam West, the cast consists entirely of newcomers. McLaughlin allocated most of the already low budget not to location or cast, but the sticky, slimy zombie puppets in the film. It thrives on its dark humor and relishes the gooey gags that the army of undead brings, while there are shots of terrified young women cowering in the corner as zombies burst out of their coffin. Meg Tilly does a fine job with her performance. Overall, the movie evokes childhood memories of narrating scary stories around a campfire where friends use macabre to scare the living crap out of one another.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.